right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, the competitor list for this weekend's Flex Pro in Italy, which is the next open bodybuilding competition and Olympia qualifier on the schedule. Rubiel Mosquera, Neckzilla, is on that list, so we're going to actually get to see him compete again. So here's the competitor list. You've got Georgi Arakashvili, Giolu Albi, Drago Bryan, who we just saw compete in the China Pro, I believe. You got Steph Bragink, Adolf Berghardt, who just competed in the Dubai Pro this past weekend, one of the few guys, in addition to Neckzilla, that's doing this. Joseph Kvetin, Antoine Loth, Dan Manchins, Rubiel Mosquera, Neckzilla, of course. Andrea Presti, who he just took second at the China Pro. And we're going to talk about that in a second, too. Kamal Topologlu and Samir Trudy. So I think this is actually a really interesting show for Neckzilla to do. I think the clear two standout names here are Andrea Presti and Neckzilla, Rubiel Mosquera. And I think noticeably absent is pretty much every top guy that competed in Dubai, or pretty much every top guy that's competed recently, except for Andrea Presti, who did not win the China Pro. And I think Neckzilla is probably the favorite here in this lineup, despite the Dubai showing being kind of viewed as him dropping the ball. Because last year he took fourth, this year he took sixth, even though he was slightly better than last year. I think a lot of people were disappointed with his showing here. But this lineup in Italy, surprisingly, really lacks almost any big names. So I think there's a decent possibility that we may actually see Rubiel qualify for the Olympia at this show. Because I think one thing that's important is to view each show in the context of the caliber of the lineup. Like, Dubai was an elite level lineup. Like I said, it was probably the fourth best lineup that we've seen of this year so far, after the Arnold, after Pittsburgh, and certainly after the 2024 Mr. Olympia. But this was a really elite level lineup. When you take a guy like Rubiel that maybe drops the ball in a more competitive lineup where you've got a bunch of Olympians, where you've got a bunch of show winners, and you put him into a lineup where it's a little bit more mid-tier, that's where someone like him has a really good chance. And I think that's kind of what I mean when I say maybe the expectations that we're putting on Rubiel are too high. We're expecting him, or some people are expecting him at least, to be kind of a world beater, mass monster freak that can come in and win these really competitive lineups with elite level guys. But maybe that's just an unrealistic expectation for him. Maybe the more realistic expectation is in a lineup where you don't really have those kind of guys. In a lineup where it's not that deep, it's not that crazy. Maybe that's the kind of lineup where Rubiel can really excel, and that's the kind of lineup that Rubiel can maybe come in and be viewed as very dominant. Now, I think the other interesting thing beyond that is if he does win this show, which I really actually do think he's got a chance to win, and he gets his Olympia qualification here, how do we see Rubiel doing at the Olympia, assuming the package is similar to what we're seeing here in Dubai? And depending on what we see here in the Flex Pro show, maybe he does tighten up more for this show. I have a feeling he'll probably look about the same as Dubai, which in this lineup might be enough to win. But if he wins this show and he gets to go to the Olympia, do we think that this version of his physique that we've seen in Dubai, if it's similar at the Olympia, where do you think he's going to place? Because I personally don't think he would be top 10 if he brought that physique to the Olympia. Now, maybe he improves upon it, and this is the other thing, too. I kind of hope that if he wins this show, I hope he doesn't stop competing here, because the excuse kind of has been he's new, he's young, he needs to get some more competitions under his belt to really figure out how to peak properly. That's kind of been the excuse for his condition so far. So I hope that even if he wins this show, he continues to do maybe a couple more. One of the commentators actually said this on the Dubai Pro commentary stream. They said they think he should do something more like Bonac did in 2025, and do something like half a dozen shows just to get that practice under his belt. Because if that's going to be the excuse that he just needs to get that experience and make these slight improvements over time, the reason that he's not doing the shows is nobody else's fault but his. He's the one that skipped a bunch of shows last year, and those could have been really valuable experience for him. So if that is the issue, and that is a legitimate excuse, that he just needs to get that experience over time and learn how to peak properly for a show, why not just do a bunch of shows between now and the Olympia? Most of the big heavy hitter guys, realistically, they're already qualified for the Olympia, and we might not see any of them compete again between now and the Olympia. So some of these lineups between now and then might be better for Rubio. I don't think we're going to see maybe any more Dubai Pro quality lineups. I mean, if you look at the IFBB schedule, we've still got a pretty significant amount of open shows and Olympia qualifiers between now and the Olympia. So if you start with this weekend, the Flex Pro, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's Masters only, Natural, Masters. 6, 7, 8, 9. You've got 9 more pro shows between now and the Olympia. That's 9 opportunities for Rubio to get that experience between now and the Olympia, if that is his goal. If he qualifies here and he goes to the O, maybe competing several times between now and then could be the key to him actually making a drastic improvement. Because if you go over and actually look at the qualified competitor list for the Olympia, you've already got 17 guys qualified. So like I said, all these big names that we've been seeing in the Pittsburghs, New York, Dubai, I think they're done. They're all qualified. I don't see any reason for very many of them to continue to compete. You got Brett Wilkins, Samson Dowda, Hadi Chupin, Derek Lunsford, Rafael Brandau, Martin Fitzwater, Akeem Williams, Brandon Curry, William Bonac, Vitaly Ugonikov, Good Vito, Andrew Jack, Nick Walker, Regan Grimes, Tonio Burton, Sasarati, Behruz Tabani, and Chang Long Shen, who just won this past weekend's China Pro. There's 17 guys on this list. These are pretty much the 17 best bodybuilders in the world. None of them need to compete. None of them need to qualify. So if there's 9 more opportunities between now and the Olympia for Neckzilla, this could be a very valuable window for him to get that experience, because I don't think there's going to be very many big threats at any of these shows. And the reason we saw so many at Dubai, despite the fact that some of them were already qualified, was the fact that there was so much prize money, 140 grand for first. And I don't believe any of the remaining shows have a big prize money opportunity like that. So if I were Neckzilla, that's what I would do. I think it's an opportunity to get his name out there, for one. I think it's also an opportunity for him to get the experience that it seems like people claim he needs. And I think it's also an opportunity for him to show that he can be consistent, commit to shows, and actually show up. Now, next up in the news, there seems to be some controversy going on with the China Pro from this past weekend. Now, supposedly, this is a photo of the real, original prejudging scorecard after prejudging but before finals. But if you go over and you look at the final scorecard that was published on the IFBB site, the prejudging scores for a lot of the guys are different on the final scorecard than what they were originally, in some cases moving guys down, like Sergey Danilov from Russia. He was in 3rd place in the original scorecard with 9 points, and somehow his prejudging score was changed to 10. And then Xiaoming Yan from China, he was in 6th place on the original prejudging sheet with 18 points, and that was probably one of the bigger discrepancies, because on the final scorecard it shows he had 11 points, which is much better, and that had him in 3rd place at prejudging, but the scorecards are different. Now, when we talk about the potential for corruption or politics in a bodybuilding competition, this is the type of situation where I could see it actually happening. I could see scores actually being changed. It's in another country that's really far away with no live stream. kind of a small lineup that a lot of people aren't familiar with. Not a lot of big names, not a whole lot of attention on this show, and also the same day as the Dubai Pro. So a lot of bodybuilding fans' focus is kind of elsewhere on Dubai while this is going on. And again, no live stream, not a lot of people watching what's going on there. It's in a country that I would assume the governing body, the IFBB being based in the United States, probably doesn't have a whole lot of reach to China or competitions held in China, in the sense that I don't know how much they could really do if they did suspect a show in China was rigged. What would they do to prove it? How would they go about punishing them? Would they remove their sanction? I mean, whatever. This is actually the type of situation where I believe it 100% could happen. Like when it's a bigger show that's live streamed and, you know, everybody's watching. All the bodybuilding fans' eyes are on what's going on at, you know, the Olympia or the Arnold or the Pittsburgh. I don't think those are the shows where you're going to have blatant rigging, changing scores, that type of thing. And you are seeing the scores that are changed are beneficial to the Chinese athletes. They're placing higher with the changing of the score. And I was able to find a much more clear video of the top two from the China Pro. So Andrea Presti on the left and Shen Cheng Long on the right, because, you know, part of the speculation came in because Andrea Presti, I think, on paper was by far the favorite to win this show, and the other guys were relatively lesser-known Chinese bodybuilders. And then for a Chinese bodybuilder that realistically no one was really familiar with, winning the show, beating an Olympian. And when I say nobody was really familiar with, I looked at his socials. He only has about 2,000 followers, the guy that won this show, the Chinese bodybuilder. So I think it is fair to say it was unexpected and that he kind of came from nowhere. But watching this top two comparison, I actually do think he looks better than Andrea Presti here. I don't disagree with him winning the show. And I think the scorecards thing and the fact that this was held in China and like all these like sketchy circumstances around it, I think leads to that assumption is you've got this random guy from China that's now qualified for the Olympia. I actually think he deserved it. I don't think this was part of the rigging if there was any. I thought he looked better than Andrea here now that you can see the HD video. But that's kind of my point with, like, if a show were to get away with rigging the result, if you didn't have HD video, if you didn't have a live stream, if you just had, you know, whatever pictures they cherry-picked to release, that would be the show to rig. But I really don't necessarily believe the winner of this was rigged. I think he was more complete than Presti. He was more balanced than Presti. His proportions were better. He was more muscular. Presti may have been slightly better conditioned, but I think overall, Shen Chen Long brought the better package here. And I also think it's very fair to say this was certainly not the best Andrea Presti that we've seen. And I think going into the this weekend's Italy show, where Andrea Presti will probably be the primary challenger to Rubiel Mosquera, when you look at his lower body, which has been kind of the biggest criticized point of his physique, going up against Rubiel, that'll be an interesting side-by-side if they're the top two. Now, next up in the news, I saw Nathan Diasha replying to some comments where he was implying that he feels like he was judged unfairly or potentially robbed at the Dubai show this past weekend. One of the comments read, "4th place, leave it as that. If you don't laugh, you'll cry," and he has a bunch of laughing face emojis, and he also says, "Mate, I would love to know every time certain judges judge me, I get a worse placing. Be a man and be big enough to say there's an issue." Look, I mean, I'll be honest. I think Nathan looked great here. But in my opinion, 4th place was exactly where he should have been. I think that Tonio looked amazing at this show. Tonio took 3rd place. I did not see Nathan placing over Tonio at all. I did not see Nathan in the conversation for beating Beirut when they stood him next to Beirut at all. I thought that Bonac deserved 2nd place. If anything, you know, I actually was impressed that Nathan was able to fight his way into the top 4, because it really did feel like at certain points during prejudging, Nathan was probably he was looking at maybe placing behind Mo Fuda until they turned him around from the back and Nathan fought his way into that top 4. But I don't disagree with Nathan in 4th at all. I think that was a really fair placing, and I don't think it had anything to do. So this is kind of the contrast of the story that we just talked about. I don't think this one has anything to do with rigging or politics or whatever. I think Nathan's placing was really fair, and I think that's exactly where he belonged, 4th place. And if you're going to claim politics, I think look no further than who won the show. If there was going to be a bias at this show where the head judge is an American, don't you think the bias would probably be felt by the Iranian bodybuilder more than anybody else, considering what's going on in the world right now? But the Iranian bodybuilder won because that was the fair result. I don't think there were any politics at play with this Dubai show. So I don't know. I just think saying that you got 4th because the judges don't like you, especially at a show like this. I mean, sometimes the argument is like, well, they don't want to waste an Olympia qualification because this guy can't compete at the Olympia or this guy's already qualified. That's the argument a lot of times for controversial victories. They want to give it to someone who can add to the Olympia lineup. But in this case, that argument doesn't even apply because neither Beirut nor Nathan have been able to compete at the Olympia for years, and Beirut still won. And I also don't think Nathan was in the conversation to win the show at any point during the show. So, I mean, maybe he's arguing he should have been 3rd, which maybe you could make an argument for, but I thought Tonio looked way better than Nathan. So I think I'll go ahead and wrap up the video there. It's getting a little bit long, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below about all the stories in today's video. Some nice, juicy stuff to talk about today. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my 3rd YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.